morning, everyone. My name is Paul Young. I'm just going to walk you through the role generative AI is going to play with the Office of Finance, including the CFO. This is my agenda. I'll do an introduction. I'll talk a bit about it. But the scope of this presentation isn't to make you an expert in it. It's more about understanding what generative AI is and overlaying that into your overall data strategy of driving better improvements for your customers, your vendors, your employees, as well as your overall financial planning and analysis reporting cycles. Here's a brief bio about myself. I'm a CPA, CGA. I have over 35 years experience, so I've worked a lot with data, driving better business outcomes, as well as looking at ways to improve business processes around leveraging technology. So generative AI in general, why it's a lot different than where we were maybe 5, 6 years ago. We're starting to be able to work with websites now to take pieces from it. We're working with videos. We're working with documentation management. So the idea is it's allowing us to work with structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data that we couldn't work with the same degree of probably 10 years ago. It doesn't mean chatbots weren't around, but they were pretty the way you could script them. They weren't sophisticated. You defined the criteria of what those chatbots would respond to, and then they would speed out things. The same with documentation tagging, whether you use some sort of discovery service. There's a way to crawl that data and tag it. So that stuff's been around. Now what's happening is you want to add smarter things in. This is where you're seeing the investment in large language models. The next generation of chatbots is really going to be more driven by the agent, and I'll get into that later on, because they're going to add in more around conversation. They're going to add around language. The idea is that when you make a phone call, however the response, it can interpret it and gear you to whatever you need to do, a document, or like maybe it's on the ordering side, maybe it's to do some work around forecasting, scenario planning. That's what it's basically going to do. As you can see here with the chat box versus agent, chat boxes, they said they were basically in general, they were run on simple algorithms, and you define exactly what you were setting up there for customer support, what it was going to do and accomplish. The virtual assistants are adding more sophistication into them to make it more like you're actually talking to somebody, but it's a virtual assistant. This gives you an idea around the differences between chatbots and virtual. As I said earlier, virtual assistants is where a lot of everything's going with, just because of the sophistication, but they're only as strong as the data it's fed. And there's been some challenges that we've seen with companies like McDonald's, others that are trying to use large language models for their drive-through or at their kiosks. There's been some challenges because it takes some data to train that model, and that's the concern over it. Like any sort of deployment, like a long language model, will have to go through sophisticated rollout and testing. This gives you an idea of some of the use cases for Office of the Finance. Fraud detection. I worked with a couple of cases that you wanted to, like a cellular phone store, where you want to look at them to mitigate people coming in using fake stuff to get equipment, and then your out losses because it's basically theft. It could also be setting up GRC models to drive more automation around the audit cycle and programs. Sophisticating financial forecasting, that's getting into predictable analytics side. Enhancing financial reporting. I work with closed consolidation reporting. You could run jobs or scripts to pull the information together versus relying heavily on Excel. Credit analysis, you can work with the credit reporting, pull the stuff and do your analysis. And you can see other one, risk management, coding, and all that. But basically, at the end of the day, what the CFO is looking at, how can it improve streamline its closed consolidation reporting cycle. These are some of the things that are challenges with it. And I bucketed them into 3 high levels: security, ethical, and privacy concerns. When you're starting to do a customer, vendor, and payroll data, you want secure around that. And we're seeing a day doesn't go by we don't see some sort of vulnerability attack or a data theft or something that comes through a backdoor way. So you really have to do proper assessments on security, proper data governance rules around how you're mapping this to do it. I've always looked at the staging of stuff, that it's not live. You pull it in and you run jobs periodically to refresh that. But the problem is some models on fraud detecting almost have to be real time in terms of how you want to work with that solution. Now, like anything else, any sort of investment has to go through an ROI, NPV. The pressure on CFOs and the organization is they're investing lots of money into this. They're not necessarily seeing it on the payback or the ROI. So it's critical, any sort of project you set up for a generative AI or any technology project, is that you have the metrics predefined. You've gone through your proper software selection process, and you've really done your complete investment analysis, return on investment, cash flow. What is your end goal? And you measure that. The other thing is, once it's deployed, it doesn't mean you just end there. It should be continuous improvements and basically looking at how you can make that model better. Generative AI isn't new. There's a lot of buzzwords around it. I work with business process changes, whether it's order to cash, purchase to pay. We leveraged a lot of technology at the time to do payments, uploading payments to vendors, payroll. You have you work with various ADP companies to do your payroll. So it's been around. What's different now is you're leveraging more of the language side and just looking at how better to do it. And also in the financial forecasting, we're starting to look at multivariate. We're starting to look at different variables that we can do to make it more intelligent planning. So that's what's critical about it. But as I said, it's not a new topic. It's just there's things that have improved. So I would call it's the next generation of AI from where we were 10 years ago. Here's some additional information how you can contact me. As I mentioned earlier, I've done over 300 data and AI deployments for 8 years. And each of those deployments had their own unique challenges, whether they were large deployments that we ended up having multiple environments set up because of the size they're doing, whether they were doing it in a phased-in approach, got their initial lift and shift to the cloud to get the adoption done, or whether they were expanding into demand planning or cost of serve models or cash flow management. I've worked at the whole gamut. I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly through all these deployments. And at the end of the day, where the criticality is having the right software, having the right business partner, and having the right change manager are critical for any project. Thank you.